Check, check. Welcome, folks, to a pre-order special of the Legend of Grimrock. I basically pre-ordered Legend of Grimrock. Ed, hell, dude, thank you very much for the heads up on the game. Quite a few of you actually have mentioned this to me in the past, and I just went ahead and pre-ordered it. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little demonstration on all of the pre-order bundle package shit that we get here. This is the actual manual. I'm not sure if I'll ever get a physical copy, but this is the digital copy from Almost Human. And we're just going to kind of scroll through it real quickly here and go over the basics. We have the contents. The ramblings of an old sage, where a few observations are made at the top of the world and some light is shed on King Justice.
Behold, a magnificent spire. Scarce are the worlds of knowledge, but it even less been written by origins of Mount Grimrock. This unnaturally high tower of mountain erects from the ground in the middle of the Darthfang ridges on the northern border of our kingdom. I had a chance to visit this grand place once, and this is my humble attempt to record the observations I made during my brief stay at the top of the world. The nearest drop to Mount Grimrock is Therilum, a rather barren mining community 7 days of horseback ride from the mountain. Even this from the distant peak of Grimrock looms in the horizon, reaching much higher than any other mountain peak in the mountain range. It juts up from the ground as if a divine force has pummeled a gigantic nail out to the ground. Its walls are very steep, almost vertical, making it unclimbable. In fact, the only way to reach the top is by airship. Being under the protection of His Grace, I had the chance to get on one of the rare airship voyages to the peak. I was accompanied by a rather grim fellowship, foul-smelling prisoners with bad teeth and their guards. The prisoners were brought here to the final trial. We arrived at the top of the sunrise, and it was a sight I shall never forget. The mountain was shrouded by wispy clouds, and streaks of rising sun filtered them through the casting purple radiance of the strange rock formations and ruins at the top. The air was chilly, and it was eerily silent. There was no signs of life, not even rodents or birds anywhere in sight, and the top was barren of all plants. The captain of the airship skillfully maneuvered his ship around the sharp rocks and anchored it next to the rotting wooden platform built several decades ago by the king's men. As we walked past the great statues depicting hooded figures, I had a sudden feel of remorse as I thought the fate of the four shackled prisoners walking heads down behind me and surrounded by armed guards. I shuddered, but they were men of crime, convicted of rightly so vile deeds. Strangely, the books of history in the Royal Library do not have any markings about the statue, nor the runes. I can only conclude that they are very old, perhaps even predating our kingdom. The colossal statues stand as tall as 5 men, and seem to be carved from a single block of rock. They have stood against the time remarkably well, as they show very little signs of corrosion by weathers and omnipresent wind that blow at the top. I could sense a faint magical aura on them, perhaps left to the preserves of the statues. In the center of the ring, the statue lies the gaping maw, a pit almost perfectly round and yet utterly repulsive. The acrid stench and puffs of fog that rose had stung my eyes. While the king's men commanded the prisoners to gather around the maw and made preparations for the court of law, I paced around the peak and took measurements. I concluded that the pit lies exactly in the geographical center of the peak, so surely it cannot be a mishap of nature. There have been previous expeditions to the darkness below the pit, but none have returned, except for one notable exception. The expedition, which was led by Lord Perel, a fierce warrior and a pious knight, well equipped with torches, heavy armor, swords, and crossbows, and rations for a week. Lord Perel descended and led 12 of his bravest men to the abyss. 3 days afterwards, only a single survivor emerged from the darkness. He was Lord Perel's squire, a feverish and mortally wounded young man. He died in the evening of that day, but not before he reported what he had seen. In his favor, was babbling madly about, getting lost in an endless winding tunnel network that reached several layers deep. He kept shrieking in a horror about his companions' faces melting when a horrible trap spewed liquid fire on them. Lord Perel himself was trapped in a dead end when a massive stone block lowered from the ceiling and sealed the corridor he was exploring. Several of their companions, now dead and their morals shaken by the fate of the Lord, had set camp in the vast dust-covered halls, flooded with cold blue light, emanating from a strange floating crystal in the center. During the rest, their creatures of the dark came. The watchmen barely had a chance to raise an alarm before a giant snail that had suddenly emerged from the darkness spat sizzling acid on them, which burned through their armor. Suddenly a flock of strange winged creatures that Squire described as crossbreed of giant crows and wyverns was all over them. The flying monsters were screeching and clawing at them. Monstrous spiders and mushroom-like creatures spouted poisonous fumes, which approaching fast the men were dropping to the floor like flies. But as the squire escaped and managed to run back to the entrance and hall and climb up the rope they had left, before he had died in the evening that day, the last thing he mentioned were the visions of the spinning cogwheels suspended in dark clouds and the booming voice in fervorous dreams. When I returned back to the mall, the court of law was already taking place. By King's command, the strongest men and women gathered every year from the prisons all over the kingdom to a trial at the top of Mount Grimrock. There they have the last chance to redeem themselves, you see. The king is furious, and rightly so. None of his men are brave enough to conquer the secrets of Mount Grimrock. Maybe someday one of these bands of criminals can do what his men are incapable of, to emerge victorious and extinguish his grace's thirst for knowledge about the ancient tunnels. I looked one more time at the grim group of newly brought prisoners. There was determination in their eyes, or maybe it was just the will to live, no matter what horrible things they would encounter down below. They were bound together by shackles at their feet, so they were forced to work together as a team. But they were worn, unarmed, and wearing only grogs. What hope could they have when all previous expeditions had failed? But the criminals didn't have anything to lose, only freedom to win. Maybe that would make the difference. I still remember the echoes of their screams. The gods pushed them over the edge of the pit. From the memoirs of Magister Alrest, sage of the Royal Library.
Legend of Grimrock is a dungeon-crawling role-playing game where you control a party of 4 prisoners trying to escape the dark underground dungeons of Mount Grimrock. The game features dungeon exploration, puzzles, secrets, combat, magic, and role-playing elements.
And then we go on with the new game, character generation. This game was basically modeled after Dungeon Master, Ultima Underworld, and the Eye of the Beholder series. If that doesn't make you cream your fucking pants, I don't know what will. This is a screen of the characterization. You can opt to make your own characters as opposed to the pre-mades. Races we have are humans, minotaur, lizardmen, insectoid. The classes are fighter, mage, and rogue. Moves a lot like Dungeon Master. You can see there where you get the two-handed weapons. Also, Eye of the Beholder is very reminiscent of that. You have your character sheets and inventory where we get to equip armor and see all the little beautiful pictures. We have our statistics pages with our skills, athletics, armors, axes, maces, swords, unarmed combat, or just to name some of the few. We also have our magic runes.
Legend of Grimrock has a rune-based spellcasting system, where all the spells are described as a combination of runes.
This is kind of a mix of the Dungeon Master and the Ultima Underworld series. You get the fire, life, air, and spirituality runes, and you can make combinations of all of them. We have the bestiary. I'm pretty sure there's more creatures than this in the game, but we have snails, undead soldiers, herders, kind of the fungus creatures. Some Crowrin, which are the wyvern crow mixtures. The Ugardians, which are kind of like, I don't know, wraiths. And then we have our key bindings and our credits. That's it for the manual. With the pre-order, we also got some Legend of Grimrock graph paper, which you can print out and you can kind of graph your own maps. So you can kind of see that here. And last but not least, we got a map. This here is the Legend of Grimrock map. And again, this is part of the pre-order. Now this was all digitally downloaded once I pre-ordered the game. Right now you can go pre-order the game, Legend of Grimrock, directly from their website for 20% off. Only $12. Seems like a great deal to me. So if any else of you are interested in purchasing Legend of Grimrock, I would advise you to go get your fucking asses over there right now and pre-order it. I'm going to be doing an LP of this on the day of release. I believe it's April 11th, something like that. But I will be starting my LP of that. Obviously, it will be somewhat blind. I doubt there's any strategy or guides out to it. But I'm going to be one of the first people absolutely uploading videos of the Legend of Grimrock. Game hoarder style, of course, folks. So stay tuned for this amazing looking game. I, of course, want to give a shout out to the creators. I hope you bring many more fucking fabulous games like this to us. And I'm looking very forward to playing the game and showing it to all of our viewers. So thank you, viewers. Thank you, Legend of Grimrock creators. Fucking hey. Let's get this shit on the road. Is it April 11th yet? God damn.